Since Torah encompasses the totality of the human condition, every situation, contingency, every possibility, there's an ideal way to do it, a better way to do it, and a less successful spiritually way to do it. There are even times when one has to close the Gemara to expedite a mitzvah, to execute the mitzvah. The times when bitula, the seemingly stopping doing the learning, that's the kiyum. That is the ultimate fulfillment of the Torah. How do we make such decisions? We need expertise. We have to have those that are grounded in halacha, that have the authority to tell us how, where, and when. There was a time in the history of Klal Yisrael where there was a concept of smicha that came down from the generations, from Ma'aber Har Sinai, those who were authorized, musmach, generation after generation, and they were the ones. The halacha of learning Torah encourages opinions, different positions. See it and say it as you see it. But when it comes to execution, to expediting, fulfilling the mitzvah, fulfillment, action, is limited in place and time. I would submit that that's why the tefillin shel Rosh has 4 compartments, and the same text is in one compartment in the tefillin shel Yad. Tefillin shel Rosh, we can consider all kinds of contingencies, possibilities. We can departmentalize. We can see things differently. And that's what the Beis Medrash is about, and that's what the discussion is about throughout Klal Yisrael's history. But when it comes to acting, you're limited by time and space. You either do it this way or that way. And so, what happens in a period of Jewish history where we no longer have smicha? There's been an interruption. The Rosh Hashanah Zatzal, those of you who want some history about Rabbi Chonon, talk to your Rebbeim, one of the giants, Gedolim of the last generation. His son, Reb Simcha, great Talmid Chacham, came as an 80-year-old Oleh to Eretz Yisrael and volunteered to give shiurim in this Beis Medrash. I remember his analogy that he said the United States, this is Reb Simcha, the United States, they've developed a synthetic potato. Looks like a potato, has the texture of a potato, it even tastes like a potato. But if you plant it, it doesn't grow potatoes. You want to know what's the difference between the genuine and the synthetic, you see if it produces continuing generations. That tzibur that has adhered to the deference, to expertise in halacha as being the decisors of law for telling us how to idealize the more perfect way of fulfilling an experience as a yochid and as a tzibur, especially as a tzibur. Like many Americans, when I first came to Eretz Yisrael, lived more than half my life now in Eretz Yisrael, Baruch Hashem, I had a certain allergy to involving religion with politics. Didn't seem right. It wasn't the norm of the culture, and it seemed to me that it would be threatening for Jews in the world that I grew up in the United States. It didn't take long before I understood here in Eretz Yisrael that we're in a debate. There's a sharp debate that goes on, not just between the Frum community and the secular community, but even within the Frum community. So how does one know what to do? One knows what to do when one attains to a certain level of confidence and conviction that the consensus of Talmidei Chachomim of the generation hold a certain position. Rabbi Chanan writes, this is in the Kuntras Divrei Sefer, V'nira, it seems to me, the kibbutz kol chachmei Yisrael yesh lo koach shel bezdin hagodol afilu b'zman delecha smuchim. Even though there isn't the formality of smicha when all the Talmidei Chacham, he says all, come together and decide this is what has to be done for Klal Yisrael. Then later he says that he quotes the Rambam, Im yasgam bizman hazeh, im yaskimu kol chachmei Yisrael, o ruban, the majority, lismoi chochum me'achachomim, af shehem ba'atzmon einon smuchim, mikol mokom smichoson smicha. Ayin shom. He cites the Rambam Pirush Mishnayos and the Rambam in the Yom Chazokah. What happens is that the elections in Eretz Yisrael, a Haredi community can become at best a kind of formalized lobby that can then work with the larger parties to try and get the norms that allow us to live in this country as a Haredi community. I've often asked many of my secular fellow Jews here in Eretz Yisrael that, tell me, if the Arab community asked to close a certain road because it was interfering with their religious beliefs, wouldn't you and your fellow leftists be out there demonstrating for the rights of the minority? Of course you would. You know what the difference is? Because implied in the way I live, implied, even if I don't say anything, implied is that I think you should live that way too. And I do. Unabashedly. But I understand it's not going to happen through coercion. But nobody is coercing anybody on his personal, private behavior. When communities with conflicting Weltanschauungs, conflicting kinds of approach, hashkafot, live side by side, so we have to find the modus operandi. How do we work in relation to each other? How do we work together? Yes, I make no apologies by thinking that anybody sitting in any Beis Medrash and enjoying an exemption from the army contributed more to the health, welfare, and protection of Eretz Yisrael than Yair Lapid's writing reviews of rock music in an army newspaper. That was his army service. Absurd. Inanity. Today in Eretz Yisrael, there's a confrontation. I think that the average secular, I'm convinced that the average secular Jew is not hostile to his heritage. There still is a residue, there still is a certain sensitivity to his heritage. That's the average. But there are people that professionally have staked their careers and made their achievement of celebrity, their panosa, their livelihoods, by fanning the fires and keeping they're professionals, that it's to their advantage. And we have an operative cloud. Is anytime somebody does something that's self-serving, he's suspect that he's doing it because it's self-serving, not because it's objectively true. And the other day we put up the sign that when Chaver Knesset of our Ram, Reb Moshe, Reb Yitzchok, Chaver Knesset came here to speak, I noted that the world in which we live, people seem to be hashkafically dyslexic. They read the verse, Shotrim v'shoftim. They decide what they want to enforce, and then they look for a rationalization to justify it. That's hashkafically dyslexic. What can we do? Some of us have a schus b'chira. To be bocher. Everybody has b'chira, right? Some of us have the opportunity. The last election, 3 votes made a difference of an additional Chaver Knesset. Amazing. There's going to be a gathering this afternoon, not far from here. There's a Jew in his 90s, Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim Kanevsky should be stark and gesund. Literally tens of thousands of people have gone to him and continue to go to him for a bracha, for an eitzah. His knowing of Kol HaTorah Kula, there are great Talmidei Chachamim, other Talmidei Chachamim in every generation. But the consensus, afilu Ruba, not just Kula, of Klal Yisrael, have enfranchised, endorsed Reb Chaim, that his Das Torah, for him to pick up at his point in life, a man wasn't mevatel a moment, bittul Torah, for anything, without some calculation that the tzibur needed him. He went to the south, he went to the north. He's going to be a few meters from here. I'm convinced that it's a Kiddush Hashem to participate in demonstrating not against something, but for something. For the Torah, that is a moreshet of all Klal Yisrael. Many years ago, there was a certain budget available through the Jewish Agency, and they were cutting out the Haredi community. And fellow I was invited to get the good news and asked me, he said, can't we have a continuing relationship even though we're not going to be supportive of you? Although my big problem is not the money that will be missing. Hashem decides what will be the sources of the revenue for Ohr Somayach at the beginning of the year. The potential for the year, and based on our actions, we can translate it from potential into actuality. We're not dependent on you. But it hurts me that you won't have a chelek, you won't have a piece of it. You won't have part of that mitzvah of impacting the next generations. For years, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force sent officers to Ohr Somayach for seminars. And then it was abruptly stopped. Yitzchak Rabin was then defense minister, and I went with Uri Zohar to see Mr. Rabin. Uri knew him from an earlier Gilgul. Mr. Rabin said, you're right. They're better officers if they learn Torah, if they know something about their generations. But it's politically incorrect for me to continue. I have too much pressure from the left. Those were the words that Yitzchak Rabin said to us. I know you're right, but it doesn't work for me now. It's hard to listen to a drosha when you understand the language. It's harder when you don't understand the language. So, any of you that can participate, to be there, to make a statement with your body, with your feet, with your presence, a statement of Kiddush Hashem, that goal recognized by Rov Talmidei Chachomim in Eretz Yisrael as the Godel Ador, picking up from Bnei Brak, coming to Yerushalayim to make his statement. And Rabbeinu Yonah teaches, though Chazal say that Chilul Hashem is guilty even b'shogeg, even if somebody contributes to a Chilul Hashem, profaning of the name of God inadvertently. The tikkun, the only tikkun, is Kiddush Hashem. And when I walk over there, I'm mechaven. I have in mind that our participation in this act of Kovod HaTorah should be a Kiddush Hashem and be machapa on all those of our brethren who are confused, who are, I think there are very few that are professional in their anger in their venting against the Haredi community. It should be a kapora for all of us and for all of them, this act of Kiddush Hashem. And the Rebbeinu Shalom, with daven, should be mezaka us with quote Shemayim and seeing that this lifestyle, our lifestyle, the greater hour of Klal Yisrael should increase, not chas v'sholom decrease.